Morning, everybody. I'm back. Had a lovely, relaxing break last week. Thank you very much. Didn't really do an awful lot. Didn't really go anywhere. Stayed at home. Spent some time with family, friends and all my animals, which was lovely. So thank you very much for bearing with me while I did that. Hadn't really had a lot of time off since the start of lockdown, so it was real refreshing. So I'm back. I'm revitalised and I am raring to go this morning. So just in case you haven't joined us before, this is Technique Tuesday. My name is Ali Board and I bring this to you every week where we discuss something, we talk about an art related thing, or I share with you my latest projects, all of that kind of stuff. If you are watching live on Facebook, then most of you know the drill already. You are very welcome to say hello or put something in the comments and I will try and get to it. I'm just going to have a quick look now to see who's in the room. Who have we got? Linda, good morning. Morning to Helen and Pauline. Ali, yes, I did enjoy my time off. Thank you very much. People saying that they missed me. That's very sweet of you. Morning, Joe, Janet, Carolyn, Beatrice, Jane. I did have a good break. Thank you. Vivian. Oh, bless you, Pauline, for saying I look good. I obviously, having some time off, certainly agreed with me. Good morning, Sophia from Guernsey. Janet and Rosie, good morning from France. And lots of people in the room. You are very welcome. Good morning. Now, you might be watching this on catch up and you might be watching this via my blog or via my YouTube channel. If you would like to see the comments that came in live whilst we recorded this, then pop over to my Facebook page, Ali Board Artist, and you'll be able to read the comments that go with it. Lots of people, goodness me, good morning. Lots of people this morning. Thank you for joining me. Because otherwise it's just me blithering onto the camera on my own. So what are we going to share today? Today we are going to talk about greens in watercolour. And it's quite a contentious subject. And actually, I would like to know your thoughts on it. So the thing that I'm going to say to you right from the get-go this morning is that this is only my opinion. And my opinion you can take with a very large pinch of salt. And the reason that I say that, good morning, Gary, sup? The reason that I say that is because you will get some artists, whether they just paint or whether they teach as well, that say you must always mix your greens. You should never buy ready-made green from a tube. And then you will get lots of people that say, don't mix your greens, it's not worth the hassle, and you kind of need to know which yellows and blues you're putting together to be able to do that. You should buy greens ready mixed from a tube. Now, none of those things are right and none of those things are wrong. They are merely a professional opinion. Who else is in the room? Mick, nice to see your smiling face. Oh, bless you, Mick. Thank you. That's very kind of you. That's cheered me right up this morning. Good morning, Hilary. Thank you very much for your kind words. So those are the two schools of thought that we have. That you can buy a range of yellows and a range of blues and then mix your greens together. That's your one school of thought. And the other school of thought is buy green ready mixed in a tube. Now, I'm going to kind of put a caveat on all of that. Yes, absolutely. Get yellows and blues. Mix your own greens. Find greens that you like. Or buy a green in a tube. But whatever you do, make sure you understand the ingredients that are going into that mix. So if you, for example, purchase a yellow that has 2 or 3 yellow pigments in it, and you purchase a blue that has 2 or 3 pigments in it, what you're doing is mixing together quite a few ingredients, which may not give you that kind of lovely, fresh, vibrant, translucent quality that you would be looking for. If you go for single pigment colours, so a single pigment yellow and a single pigment blue, then you're going to be fine. But of course, you need to know that information. And where do you find that information? Well, you can find that information on manufacturers' websites. They're full of that kind of information. Or places like the SAA, where in their catalogue, particularly online, you can click on a colour and you can see the properties of it. Or you can just do a bit of research. Bear in mind that recipes do change, that just because a manufacturer states that this pigment is used on that particular tube, you can't just rest on your laurels and take that as a matter of course for every time you buy that colour. You need to do a bit of double checking. And the same goes for pre-mixed green as well. Don't automatically assume that it's a single pigment. Don't automatically assume that it's got lots of pigments thrown in there together. Just be a little bit more informed. And as always, my overriding piece of advice is find what works for you. I went through a huge period of getting yellows and blues and mixing them together and finding greens. And as I can see, there's a few comments coming in about how if you, what was I saying? Completely lost my thread then. I was thinking about what colours I'm going to be doing. That if you are going to mix your greens together, then that's fine. If you want to buy a green that's in a tube, then use that. It doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong. Ignore the art police. Ignore what they tell you. Ignore them when they say you should do this and you shouldn't do that. You do what's good for you, okay? So I'm going to take you to the overhead shot and you can see some of my favourite greens already there for you. Good morning, Dee. Nice to see you. Rosie is making a very good point that actually when you mix colours together, you can make mud really easily, and I'm going to kind of come to that. Good morning, Eileen. Nice to see you. Lots of people in the room today. So here are 5 of my favourite pre-mixed greens, and I'm going to tell you why I like them. I'm going to give you a little bit of information on them, and then we're going to look at some new ones today. Don't forget to get your comments in the thread and I will get to them, I promise. So let's take you through those. So this one is green gold. This is a colour that you might recognise. Green gold is a colour that pops up in all manufacturers. Now I've got 2 green golds here, which may surprise you. Both of these, in fact all 5 of these colours are Daniel Smith colours, and I'm sure most of you have deduced by now that I am quite the Daniel Smith fan. There's a really good reason for that. They make very good colours. Now they have 2 green golds, and I wanted to show you these 2 today because it kind of illustrates my point. This is the one that they call green gold. This is a transparent colour, but you can see there I've listed the pigments. So we've got 2 yellow pigments and we've got a green pigment in there too. Now it is a lovely colour. It's very fresh, it's very bright, it's an excellent colour for spring. But if I go to mix that with another colour, say, I don't know, Payne's Grey, for example, which I know also has 3 pigments in it, then there is a chance that I'm going to make mud. It's not absolutely certain that I'm going to make mud, but I am in the danger area. Now this green gold, which Daniel Smith also do, is called rich green gold. And interestingly, whilst it is obviously got a green, but has got a very high yellow bias, that is because it's a yellow pigment and that's only got 1 pigment in it. So you're much more likely to make very fresh colours out of that. It is semi-transparent as opposed to being very clear transparent, but that is usually one of the greens that I go for on a regular basis. What have we got? So I'm just looking at the comments. The wrong green can spoil a painting. Yes, Jean, you're absolutely correct. And she's saying that she loves Daniel Smith. Good morning, Jackie. Very nice to see you. Now I would have thought the complex mixes would give something better. Oh, well, I'm glad that we have thrown something else into your train of thought this morning. Pauline saying she uses both of the end ones on her palette. Yes, yeah, I mean, this is it. It's very personal, isn't it? Now, this one here has to be my favourite green out of a tube. This is Green Appetite Genuine. If you haven't come across it before, I would strongly recommend that you give it some thought. This is a Daniel Smith colour. It's one of their Primatech range, so it doesn't have a pigment number because it is actually a mineral that has been mined. There is a mineral called Green Appetite. It's called Genuine because it is actually Green Appetite. And one of the reasons that I love it so much, if you've seen any of the landscapes that I paint, let's bring it up to the camera so that you can see it a little more closely. It splits into 2 colours. Not only does it granulate, but it splits into a green and a brown, which makes it very natural looking. And I have to say, one of my favourites. And I know that the minute that I share this, there's going to be lots of people in the comments that go, yes, I use green apatite just because it's just such a beautiful colour. Moving on to the last two, we've got Cascade Green, which is a Daniel Smith colour here. This one I find interesting because it is, it's got quite a blue bias to it, as you can probably see in the sample. So it is green, but it's got a lovely turquoise that it splits into as well. And I've got the two pigments up there listed. And then Pyrulene Green, which is another popular one because it is quite dark. And as we know, that mixing dark green is really tricky to do without making mud. And the interesting thing about Pyrulene Green is that it actually isn't a green pigment. It's a black pigment that has a green bias. So it's PBK 31. So those are 5 that I use an awful lot. I have to say, out of those 5, those are the 2 that I probably use more than anything else. The rich green gold and the green apatite genuine. Let's just have a little look at the comments just to see what's coming in. Mick says, wasn't Hooker's Green invented by William Hooker, famous botanical illustrator? Yes, you're absolutely correct, Mick, as he required a standard dark green for the leaves he regularly painted, so ready-made greens were used by artists when required. Yes, absolutely, Mick. Very good homework. Gold star for your homework. Fantastic. And we'll talk about Hooker's Green as well in a little bit. Christine saying, hate doing trees and struggle with which green to use. Well, I'm hoping, Christine, that this gives you a bit of insight today. Yes, and everyone's remarking about the granulation. So that's good. So those are the 5 that you will see on a regular basis in my work. But I thought it would be interesting today to have a look at some greens that I don't use an awful lot. So let's start with these 4 and see how we get on. Oh, wrong way round, Ali. So we have, Jane is saying Undersea Green and Green Apatite are my favourite. I'm going to get to Undersea Green, Jane. You're ahead of me. So here's 4 that you may or may not have heard of. So this one we have got Viridian. And as we go through them, I'm going to wet them too with my spray bottle so they're ready to go. There's Viridian. That is a Winsor & Newton one. Here we've got Hooker's Green Light and Hooker's Green Dark. Now these are both De La Rowney artist quality watercolours, and they tend to split their Hooker's Green into 2 different ones, and I'll talk more about that in a second. And this one is one that you may not have come across before. This is a Rembrandt colour, and this is called Dusk Green. So there are my 4 ready to go. And as you know, I like to create little samples of each one. So here are my little sample cards. Again, I'll talk more about those later in a moment. And I just need to grab a little bit of kitchen roll, just, you know, my little safety net there. And I've got an SAA imitation sable brush, a size 6, and my pot of water just out of shot. So as you can probably hear, I'm wetting my brush. And let's start with the Viridian. So Viridian is a very traditional colour in watercolours, got a real blue bias to it. It's Winsor & Newton's pigment is PG18, but that's a kind of standard for most manufacturers. Let's move those out the way. And is really, really useful for those kind of soft greens in the distance. Now, when you paint it on, oh, look at that, Jack Russell hair. Look at that. When you paint it on, it is quite vivid, but mixed with other things such as cerulean or blacks or browns, all of those kind of things, you will find that you get some really beautiful soft tones out of it. I think it's a bit glow in the dark for me, straight out of the tube, but I do acknowledge that it is quite a traditional colour. So let's hold that up to the camera, and you can see it is a transparent colour. It does granulate too, and it is in that kind of traditional realm. So that's quite a nice turquoisey one to go for. Now here we have the first of our Hooker's Greens. So this is the De La Rowney, and like I said, is split into Hooker's Green Light and Hooker's Green Dark. Now what's interesting about this in De La Rowney, if I can just bring these into shot. So Hooker's Green Light is a green and a yellow pigment mixed together. Hooker's Green Dark is a yellow, a green and a violet mixed together. But what's interesting, and here's where you need to know your stuff, that you can probably see from my little illustration, they're not the same pigments in both. So don't always assume that because one is called light and one is called dark, they are versions of the same thing. Linda is saying, is Viridian a less staining version of Fallow Green? Yes, it does have a blue bias, Linda. You're absolutely right. And this is what's great about this discussion when I get you all in the room at the same time, is that you can all impart your knowledge as well. And when I talk more about my blog post in later on in this broadcast, you'll be able to share your experiences on there too. So here's the Hooker's Green Light. Now this is a transparent colour, but it's quite pigment heavy. So when you put it on, it does tend to be, again, really quite strong. What's Helen saying? Viridian can work well on holly and ivy with some burnt umber. There you go. Perfect. Thank you, Helen. Helen is, we're very lucky to have Helen in the room today because she's a very accomplished tutor. And so is sharing her knowledge and her advice on the subject too. Thank you, Helen, for doing that. So let's thin that out a little bit and bring that down, and you can see it's lovely and fresh and bright, really lovely and fresh and bright. So that was one for your consideration. And then we've got the Hooker's Green Dark, which has got dust all over the surface of it this morning, so let's get rid of that. I left these out in my studio overnight and I forgot to cover them up when they were wet. That was a bit silly of me, wasn't it? That one's got Jack Russell hair in it too. So here is the Hooker's Green Dark. So you can probably see on the Hooker's Green Light, it's got a real yellow bias to it. And the Hooker's Green Dark is much bluer. Very useful for sea. So those of you that like to do kind of crashing waves and that kind of thing, where the light underpins a wave, Hooker's Green Dark can be really useful for that one. Oh, determined to get stuff in my paint today. Just determined. What is Pauline saying? Mixing Viridian with other colours such as a rose, you get some lovely shadow colours, well worth experimenting with. Yes, absolutely. And don't discount greens for your portraiture either. Your portrait painters out there. Greens can be astonishingly useful for your portraits. Sally is saying, wish I could do swatches as nicely as you, Ali. Thank you, Sally. It is an astonishing amount of practice. And sometimes they still do go a bit wrong. There's my Hooker's Green Dark. Now on to the really interesting one, which is the Dusk Green, which is one that you might not have seen before. These were brought out earlier in the year, I think. I may be wrong. Somebody correct me if I am wrong. By Rembrandt. Now these are mixtures of PBK 11, which is a Mars Black pigment and granulates really, really well. And this is mixed with PG 7, which if you have a look over here, this is very interesting, because PG7 occurs in the Hooker's Dark and PG7 occurs in the Hooker's Light as well. So you can start to cross-reference your colours. Now, when I put that on, I absolutely agree. You're going, well, that's not green, Ali, that's black. But hold your horses just a second, because as I pull this colour down and I add some water to it and pull it down the page, I haven't got my glasses on today, so Sally, I'm surprised I'm being able to paint between the lines, if I'm honest. As I pull that down, you can see that it beautifully granulates, and actually in its palest tone, you can see that you get some really, really interesting pale versions of the colour. So let's hold that up to the camera. Now if I compare that with the Pyrulene Green, so let's put the Pyrulene Green and the Dusk Green next door to each other, whilst that Pyrulene Green is very useful, really for the kind of the deepest darks, what you've got here is a similar version, but it granulating. So that's why that particular Dusk Green was of interest for me. Now, Pauline is asking, question, Ali, where do you get your rings from for the swatches? I'm going to give myself a shameless little plug, Pauline, because very soon you will be able to buy the binding rings, which I use for my swatches, and my metal tins on my website. I thought I'd be able to get to it on my holiday, but I have to say that art took a little bit of a backseat on my holiday. So just bear with me on that, and I will try to get them on the website as soon as I can. So let's just recap. We've got the Viridian, the Hooker's Light, the Hooker's Dark, and the Dusk Green. 4 colours for you to consider in your own palette. Let's move those to one side. Have a bit of a clean up before we get to the next ones. somebody remind me at the end if I don't talk about where you can see these colours in more detail. I have set something up over on my blog. Now, here we have 4 different colours again. So we have Undersea Green, which is a Daniel Smith colour, and I will get to in a second. And we have the 2 Windsor Greens. So we have Windsor Green Yellow shade, and we have Windsor Green Blue shade. And then the one on the end, Serpentine, which is also a Daniel Smith colour. So kind of interesting assortment that I've got going on here. So let's knock those down. Jackie is saying, newbie here, why do some pigments granulate and others not? Very good question, Jackie. Thank you very much for asking it. It's to do with the makeup of the pigment and how large the pigment particles are, in the fact that because watercolour paper has a texture to it and a bit of a surface, those pigment particles that are slightly larger than others will settle into the surface of the paper, and that gives you that kind of speckled granulation. So what have we got here? Oh dear, excuse me. Morning, Alan. Good morning, Ali D. Good morning, Anne. Alan, you are very, very welcome to the party. So let us have a look at these. Undersea Green, interesting because it is a 3 pigment colour. It's got a blue, an orange and a yellow in there. So that's quite an interesting one. And of course, after me saying you don't want very many pigments in there, I've kind of shot that out the water, haven't I? That I've got 3 pigments in there and it shouldn't technically work. Over here, you have got Windsor Green Yellow shade, which is PG36, a lovely transparent pigment. Windsor Green Blue shade, there's that PG7 again, that pigment that we saw in the Hooker's Green Light and the Hooker's Green Dark. So why are they called yellow shade and blue shade? This is to do with colour bias. So if you are making a green, if you were doing it traditionally, you would make it out of a yellow and a blue. So if you had more yellow in it, it would have a yellow bias. And if it had more blue in it, it would have a blue bias. And pigments are described in the same way, even when they are single pigments. So you have Windsor Green Yellow shade, which is supposedly a yellow bias colour, and Windsor Green Blue shade, which is supposedly a blue bias colour. And then over here on this side we have Serpentine Genuine. Why is there no pigment up there? It's because this is one of Daniel Smith's Primatech colours again, so this is actual serpentine. Alan is sharing some of his doctor knowledge in the comments. Thank you very much. And Rachel is there too. Good morning to you all. So let's start with that Undersea Green. So this is the one that shouldn't work, isn't it? This has got 3 pigments in it. But if you think about it logically, if you were using this on its own and therefore you don't need to mix a blue and a yellow together, then it's no worse than that. It's only when you start mixing a 3 pigment colour with another 3 pigment colour that you get in trouble. And I particularly love these kind of pigments that shouldn't work. So here is the Undersea Green. I know some of you are saying that Undersea Green is a real favourite of yours. I agree with you. I think that this is a rather lovely colour. If you compare it with the Green Apatite Genuine, kind of comes into a similar framework, doesn't it? Lovely kind of colour that will split and granulate and do interesting things. People who are saying that they're sorry that they have to go, absolutely, go. You know that you can get this on catch up either on my Facebook page or via my blog or on the YouTube channel. I will talk more about that at the end. Morning again, Dee. People having a chat amongst themselves this morning. I love it. Windsor Green Yellow shade. So here is your yellow bias colour. Let's have a look at what it looks like on our watercolour paper. Incidentally, which watercolour paper am I using? That might be of interest to you. I am using Saunders Waterford £140 knot surface in the extra white so that you can really see those colours and how they shine on the paper. Now, this isn't a favourite of mine, it has to be said. This is a little bit too luminous for me. However, that doesn't mean anything. It might be the perfect colour for your project, but it would be remiss of me if I didn't share that with you. So there is the Windsor Green yellow shade, very bright. In fact, the camera's not really doing it justice. That is super, super bright in the studio. Anne is saying, I've just ordered your DVD. I'm going to try painting on your Facebook page header as well version. Have you had a print of it anywhere? I haven't, Anne, but it's had so much lovely feedback that I am considering it. I've just got to find it. That's my issue with it, to re-photograph it. Jean was saying, I thought I was late. No, Jean, you're very, very welcome. So here we go. Here is the Windsor Green blue shade. This is very turquoisey by comparison. Again, very good for those of you that like your seascapes. Didn't fill my brush up with a lot of colour. I could have put a bit more of that on there, but never mind. Never mind. Let's bring that colour down the page. Adding a bit more water as we go. So there you can see that PG7 again. That very kind of blue biased. And the descriptions are correct, aren't they? Windsor Green yellow shade, Windsor Green blue shade. So companies are very good at describing them for you. So there's that one. Very rich. You can get some really interesting darks out of that. All sorts of things going on. Felt tip green. Rachel, I love that. That's brilliant. I'm going to call it that in future. And then the last one that we've got here, the Serpentine Genuine. So again, this is what I would call a natural green for me, for the plain and simple reason that if you're using a pigment that is found in nature rather than manufacturing one or making one chemically, then it's going to look like nature, isn't it? This is similar to the green golds, but obviously it granulates possibly a little bit more than the green golds, and I think you can get slightly paler tones out of this one. Morning, Sam. So there we go. There is the Serpentine Genuine. So let's get them all back into shot again. Let's just have a bit of a tidy up. So there's the Serpentine, the Windsor Greens, the Undersea Greens. What else have we got? The Hooker's Dark, the Hooker's Light, and the Viridian. And let's see if we can just get them as many into shot as possible. With those 5 that I showed you earlier, they're not all going to fit in the camera, but you will certainly get an idea of all the greens together and which way they are going to go and which way they're going to be useful to you. I think you can probably say that you can see why I choose those particular 5 as my favourites. I have to say, though, I think that the Pyrulene Green is going to get bumped for the Dusk Green in future, just simply because I think that little selection of colours, and if I take the green gold out because that's one that's a bit of a problem for me, those 4 at the top, the rich green gold in the Daniel Smith, the green Apatite Genuine in the Daniel Smith, the Cascade Green in the Daniel Smith, and the Dusk Green in the Rembrandt. Those 4 across the top are going to make really useful colours. Mick is saying, what shade of green would you be if you were green with envy? I'd probably be Viridian. Actually, that's not a bad shout, Mick. Yes, I think I'm probably more Hooker's Green Light, possibly. I'm probably more this shade. Oh dear, you're all brilliant. Do you know that? I love having these conversations with you. It's just fantastic. Now, rather than having to look back over this video time and time again to get the information, I have set up a page on my website. So my website is www.alisonseaboard-fineart.co.uk, or just Google Alison Seaboard Artist. If you go onto my website, there is a resources page, which is something that I'm going to build up over time. It's not fully functioning yet. It's still a whole load of information to go. But what I am going to do for you on there is every time we do one of these discussions about colour, I will scan those images in and I will pop them up onto the website so that if you're thinking, I need to buy a tube of green, what was it that Ali suggested? I need to go and have a look at her colours again. You will get the actual colour swatch of what it looks like, and I will put the details on there of who makes it and what the pigment numbers are and whether it's transparent or whether it granulates and all of those kind of things, which I hope will be useful to you. And also, if you're kind of coming in late or you fancy finding this video really easily again, pop to the website and it's under the blog. So every week, as you know, Technique Tuesday happens, and I write a little bit more about what we've done, and I pop this video into the blog so that you can watch it back again. And also, if you can't do any of those things, you will find it on the YouTube channel too. So I'm just going to have a quick look, see if there are any more questions. Pauline is asking, do you treat the genuine colours as single pigments if mixing? Yes, absolutely, because they are what they are. It's a really good question, Pauline. Thank you. Maggie is saying, sorry, just found you. What make was Undersea Green? Undersea Green was the Daniel Smith one. You can get it in the small tubes and the large tubes, I believe. So I hope that was useful to you. Please keep sharing the work that you're doing. I've seen on my Facebook Learning to Paint page that people have been sharing some of the paintings that they've been doing, which is fabulous. Always lovely to see your work. It's really, really wonderful to be back. I feel completely recharged and full of energy. And there's lots of exciting things for me on the horizon. So keep in touch. Technique Tuesday, we'll be back with you again next week. Same time, same place. If you have any questions in the meantime, then drop me a line. I always love to hear from you. My email address is downendfarmstudio, all one word, @gmail.com. But in the meantime, you take lots of care. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. Lots of people saying that they're really loving the resources page. And lots of people saying that I still spend money for them, and I'm sort of apologise for that. But hopefully this will kind of narrow down so that you're not buying things that you don't need. But until I see you next week, take lots of care, won't you? Continue to stay safe, and myself and the SAA and the Artist Demo team will continue to bring you hopefully lots of inspiration and lots of exciting projects for you to continue with at home. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.